Welcome back to Chapter 8 of Healing America's Narratives, and we're speaking about the lack of health and caring, problems with what some people would call a healthcare system in the United States. In the previous episode, we mentioned the opioid tragedy, disaster, whatever you want to call it, the addiction issue in this country. Produce Pharma, which was the manufacturer and marketer of much of these opioids, and the Sackler family, were a group of medical doctors who, decided to become entrepreneurial, built this pharmaceutical company, and then, worked really hard to get people addicted, and then even wanted to help produce some drugs that fought against the addiction. But more specifically, what we find out in the, over a decade in which they battled the federal government and state governments in the court systems, because of their responsibility, their culpability in the opioid addiction, two familiar lessons in the larger context of Healing America's Narratives emerge here. First is that the justice system doesn't provide equal protection of the laws because the Sackler family, as other very, very wealthy individuals in the United States, can afford to spend decades in courts paying attorneys to represent them. Okay, so we don't really have that. Happened to me. I would lose probably if I had done something like that because I can't afford to pay an attorney that long. I would be bankrupt. Second, we want to return to what Neil Sheehan said about the My Lai Massacre in Vietnam, about its inevitability because of what the soldiers on the ground saw or experienced in terms of the bombing of the Vietnamese people and the dropping of napalm, and that the United States federal government and the generals seemed to dehumanize the Vietnamese people, the way they treated them. So Sheehan said that what happened on the ground in My Lai was inevitable because of the infrastructure, the system, the culture of the federal government and the military at the time. Coming back to this opioid addiction and the pharmaceutical companies, the hundreds of thousands of addictions and overdoses and deaths, I would argue, are inevitable consequences of, and this is again is my judgment, of the arrogance and greed and excess and the very untrustworthiness of Purdue Pharma's founders and other companies as well, not just them, who were basically enabled by what I like to refer to as the larger for-profit insurance, pharmaceutical, medical, government, financial lobbying culture and infrastructure, which again puts President Eisenhower's idea of the military industrial complex in a different context. Again, the groups that work together to help make possible this type of addiction in the United States while people are making a profit from it include insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, the medical community, especially corporate medical community, United States government, the financial industry, and all of their lobbyists in Washington, D.C. That's a pretty powerful group of folks. All right, so again, we're looking at the lack of health and caring in the United States. We'll probably spend another episode or two there and then move on. So thank you for your resilience and hanging in there with this process.